USDA forecasts record crops and adequate, if not burdensome, supplies. Can the market recover? Hot, dry weather will bake parts of Brazil. Is it enough to rally sagging soybean prices? USDA's big January data dump is history. What's next for the grain market? Senior editor Bob Bergdorfer joins me to run down a busy time for the trade. USDA's January reports are always highly anticipated, if only due to the sheer volume of data released. In addition to production, supply, and demand data, grain stocks and winter wheat seedings also provide something for everybody. What did USDA say about production and carryout on Monday, Bob?
Bryce, the reports told us that there's going to be plenty of soybeans. USDA, of course, raised the U.S. crop, and it also raised Brazil's as well. The U.S. increase is probably a little more surprising than Brazil's. We had agriculture economists and analysts in Brazil, of course, reporting larger crop there. In addition, the USDA also raised global ending stocks by quite an amount. So that's going to tell us there's going to be plenty of soybeans in the world in 2015, and it'll certainly make it harder for us to compete, with foreign beans, particularly out of Brazil. And Argentina has a fairly decent crop as well. We saw a little reduction in the corn crop. It is still over 14 billion bushels. It's still huge, but they trimmed it a little bit, but lowering the yield. Wheat, they pretty much left unchanged production and exports. The exports was a little bit of a surprise. As we know, wheat exports have had trouble competing in global markets. EU has a big crop. Russia, Ukraine have big crops this year, although they may be smaller next year. But nonetheless, there's plenty of wheat. And with the strong dollar, that's going to make our crop a little harder to compete in global markets. So I think analysts going down the road expect maybe USDA will be trimming that export number.
The USDA report settled most, but not all, of the debate over the size of the crops. Questions remain. The December 1st soybean stocks estimate was unusually small, considering what we know about supply, exports, and crush. That suggests the crop may be significantly smaller, though USDA won't make any revisions until the end of September. Our Farm Futures survey showed 114 million bushels less than USDA found. Farm program certifications out in the wee hours this morning also added fuel to the fire. These continue to run much smaller than indicated by the official USDA production estimates. My analysis shows corn plantings more than 1.3 million acres less than USDA, with beans off more than 600,000. The numbers may be moot because there are still plenty of bushels to go around. Still, soybean demand remains red hot. What did the demand numbers show today, Bob?
Well, Bryce, weekly exports of corn and soybeans and wheat came out today. But all of them were a little better than the previous week, and corn and beans I think were a little larger than expected, wheat within expectations. But the bigger picture is wheat exports overall are just disappointing. They're down quite a bit from a year ago, and it's just hard for the wheat, U.S. wheat anyway, to compete with the supplies we have overseas. Not only does Europe and Russia, Ukraine have big crops, as I mentioned, but also our strong dollar is making it more expensive. In addition, you have the strong freight rates here versus, say, out of Ukraine, the Black Sea, Europe. So that's keeping wheat kind of, wheat sales down. We also had the NOPA monthly soybean crush came out today. It was huge again, the second largest December crush ever. But unfortunately, analysts were looking for an even bigger number, and when it came out, that of course put some pressure on soybeans. But the crush price has been going very good. As I said, the December was the second largest on record for a December. The previous record was a year ago. So the numbers are good in that respect.
Weak exports remain a concern for wheat, and USDA raised its estimate of carryout due to poor feed usage. The price outlook for 2015 crop got a little support from the agency's first survey of winter wheat seedings, which found almost 2 million less acres than we showed in our recent survey. Winter kill hurt crop ratings in December, but this week's cold snap didn't get far enough south to affect fields without snow cover. The other area on the weather watch this week is Brazil. Temperatures are forecast to rise into the mid-90s over dry areas of south central and eastern Brazil, which received below average rainfall so far during the growing season. Still, there are forecasts for better rainfall later next week. Another area for concern is the outside volatile markets, especially crude oil. Margins for ethanol plants worked deep into the red this week as the biofuel market tanked. Production remains almost 5% above year-ago levels, however, which is good news for corn demand. Bob, the dollar was especially volatile today. What caused all the movement?
Our dollar continues to get stronger as the U.S. economy fares better than others, particularly oil-reliant countries like Russia. Low oil prices, of course, and U.S. sanctions have done a lot of damage to the ruble. The strong dollar is certainly not good for our exports, agriculture exports. As I mentioned before, wheat is struggling, and so that's going to have an effect on that, possibly maybe soybeans down the road too, particularly now that we see the strong Brazilian crop. Also this week we saw the Swiss National Bank, take the lid off the Swiss franc, allowing it to float. The franc, as you know, soared. It went up quite a bit higher late in the week.
Well, thanks, Bob. Safe haven buying was definitely in play today after the Swiss removed the cap on their solid rock currency, sending the dollar first lower, then sharply higher. Gold and bonds also were up as well on safe haven buying. It's still unclear whether all this turmoil will lure investors back to ag contracts or force them to start selling again. Futures, especially soybeans, have a seasonal tendency to weaken in February, which could also be a factor. Well, we'll be back soon to see if that trend plays out in 2015 on the next edition of The Buzz.
We'll have to have more margin now, there isn't any doubt. So you better dash with a load of cash or we'll have to sell you